The Lakers may have spent this entire offseason building exactly what Luka Dončić wanted. They got him the center he needed. They kept Austin Reaves. They added defenders, shooters, and players who don't need the ball in their hands to make an impact. On paper, this should be the moment everything finally comes together. But there's a problem. And it's not Luka. It's not Austin Reaves. It's not even Walker Kessler. It's what happens when the playoffs arrive and an elite defense decides it isn't afraid of anyone else on the floor. Because Luka Dončić can destroy a defense when that defense has to respect every option around him. But if one defender can leave his man and help Luka without being punished, the entire offense changes. And that's why one name keeps becoming more interesting in this Lakers conversation. Not the Klay Thompson who scored 37 points in one quarter. Not Game 6 Klay. Not the version who once hit 14 threes in a single regular season game. That player is gone. I'm talking about the 36-year-old Klay Thompson, who still shoots the ball at a level that could potentially change the geometry of a Luka Dončić offense. And if you understand what the Lakers have actually built this summer, you start to see why this isn't really a story about Klay. It's a story about the one problem Luka can't solve by himself. For the first time since Luka arrived in Los Angeles, the Lakers appear to have a very clear blueprint. This isn't about trying to squeeze one more season out of the old LeBron era. This is Luka's team now, and Los Angeles has spent heavily to make that transition work. The biggest move was Walker Kessler. The Lakers gave Utah 2 unprotected first-round picks, along with future pick swaps to bring in the center they believe fits Luka's game. Then they committed 4 years and $130 million to Kessler. That's an enormous investment, but it tells you something important about what Los Angeles believes Luka needs. He needs a big who can protect the rim. He needs someone who can screen for him. And most importantly, he needs someone who can turn the defensive attention Luka creates into easy points around the basket. Then the Lakers locked up Austin Reaves. 4 years, $185 million. Reaves gives Luka another ball handler, another creator, and someone who already understands how to play next to a superstar who controls the offense. Then came the supporting pieces: Quentin Grimes, Colin Sexton, Matisse Thybulle, Sandro Mamukelashvili, Zaire Williams. Different players, different strengths, but the same basic idea. Build a roster around Luka, give him a rim runner, give him another creator, give him defenders, and surround all of it with enough shooting that teams can't simply collapse on Luka every time he attacks. That's the plan. And Luka reportedly liked the direction. The problem is that there is a massive difference between having players who can shoot and having shooters that playoff defenses are genuinely afraid to leave. That's where this gets interesting. Watch Luka run a pick and roll. The defense knows what's coming. Luka has the ball, the screen arrives. And almost immediately the defense starts making a choice. Do we stay with Luka? Do we protect the rim? Do we help on the roller? Do we stay attached to the shooters? Because once Luka gets downhill, somebody has to make a decision. And that's exactly what Luka wants. He doesn't need to beat 5 defenders. He needs to force one defender to make the wrong decision. But there's a catch. That only works when the players around him punish the defense for helping. Imagine Luka and Kessler running a pick and roll. Kessler rolls to the basket. The defender guarding the corner has 2 choices: stay home or help. If he stays home, Luka can attack with more room and Kessler has a path to the rim. If he helps, Luka can throw the ball to the corner. Simple. But here's the problem. If the defender looks at the shooter and thinks, "I'll live with that shot," then the entire equation changes. The defense can load up on Luka, it can send help early, it can shrink the floor. And suddenly the Lakers are asking Luka to create something extraordinary against a defense that has already decided the other 4 players aren't dangerous enough. That is the problem. Luka doesn't just need shooting, he needs gravity around him. He needs defenders to believe that leaving someone open is a mistake. And there may be one player available who can still create exactly that kind of hesitation. Klay Thompson. Before we go any further, let's be honest. Klay Thompson is not the player he used to be. He's not the guy who scored 37 points in a quarter. He's not the Game 6 version who destroyed Oklahoma City. He's not the player who once made 14 threes in a regular season game. That Klay is gone. And if the Lakers are imagining they're getting that player back, they shouldn't make the trade. But here's the part that makes this interesting. They don't need that Klay. They need a very specific version of him. Last season in Dallas, Thompson averaged just 11.7 points per game while playing 21.7 minutes. Those were career-low numbers, but even during one of the worst statistical seasons of his career, he still shot 38.3% from 3 on 7.6 attempts per game. That's the number that matters, because Los Angeles doesn't need Klay to create offense. They don't need him taking difficult shots. They don't need him running the offense. They need him to stand somewhere on the perimeter and make a defender think twice before helping Luka. That's a completely different job. And it's one Klay may still be extremely good at. Luka has the ball at the top. Kessler sets the screen. Klay is standing in the corner. Now the defense has a problem. If the defender stays attached to Klay, Luka has more space. If the low man steps toward Kessler, Luka can find Klay. If two defenders go at Luka, the ball moves and the defense has to rotate. And Klay doesn't need 3 seconds to get his shot off. Catch, release, 3 points. That's what made him so valuable for so many years. The shooting itself matters, but the fear of the shooting matters even more. Because the defense has to make that decision before Klay even touches the ball. And that's what elite spacing really means. It's not just about how many threes you make, it's about what your reputation forces the defense to do. A random 35% shooter can hit an open 3. Klay Thompson can make a defense think, maybe we shouldn't help at all. And if that hesitation gives Luka another half second, that's dangerous. Because Luka doesn't need much. Give him a tiny advantage and he'll turn it into an entire possession. There's another reason this fit is more interesting than it first appears. Klay has already played with Luka. He knows what it's like to stand on the perimeter while Luka controls the possession. He has already seen how defenders react when Luka starts drawing 2 bodies. He knows when to stay, he knows when to drift, he knows when to cut, and he knows the most important rule of playing next to Luka. Don't get in his way. That matters. Because when an older veteran joins a new team, there is usually an adjustment period. But Klay has already experienced the Luka offense. He already knows what his job looks like. And now Luka is in Los Angeles. The player Klay chose Dallas to play with is now the player the Lakers are building around. That's why this possibility keeps coming back. This is where the Lakers aren't the only team with a reason to make a deal. Dallas has a completely different timeline. The Mavericks are building around Cooper Flag. They're developing young talent. They're trying to figure out what their next era looks like. And Klay Thompson is 36. He's on a $17.5 million contract for the upcoming season. If Dallas believes it can turn that salary into younger pieces or future flexibility, moving Klay could make sense. That doesn't mean Dallas is going to give him away. It doesn't mean the Lakers have agreed to anything. And it certainly doesn't mean a trade is inevitable. But the circumstances are there. Dallas has a reason to listen. Los Angeles has a reason to call, and both teams have roster decisions they need to make. That's where a theoretical trade becomes interesting. Because the Lakers don't need to find another superstar. They need to solve one specific problem. And that makes Klay a much more logical target than his age would suggest. Now, here's where we need to slow down. Because this isn't some perfect basketball solution. The first problem is obvious. Klay is 36. His athleticism isn't what it used to be. His defense isn't what it used to be. His scoring isn't what it used to be. And the Lakers are building around Luka for the next several years. So why sacrifice anything meaningful for a player who may only provide value in the short term? That's a legitimate question. Then there's the defensive problem. The Lakers added Matisse Thybulle for a reason. They need perimeter defense. They need players who can survive against elite Western Conference guards. Klay isn't that player anymore. If he's playing 25 minutes every night, Los Angeles may be trading some defensive flexibility for shooting. And that's a real trade-off. Then there's the biggest question of all. Would Klay accept the role the Lakers actually need him to play? Because if Klay expects to start, handle the ball, and have plays designed around him, this gets complicated very quickly. But if he's willing to become something much simpler, a specialist, a shooter, a veteran who plays 20 minutes and makes every defense pay for helping, then the fit becomes much more compelling. And that may be the most important question in the entire conversation. Not, is Klay still good? But, is Klay willing to be exactly what Luka needs? And this is where another Lakers pursuit becomes important. Los Angeles has also been linked with Jonathan Kuminga. On paper, Kuminga is almost the opposite of Klay. He's young, he's athletic, he can defend, he can attack, he has room to develop. From a long-term perspective, you can understand why the Lakers would prefer that kind of player. But there's a basketball problem. Luka already creates offense. He already gets downhill. He already draws defenders. He doesn't necessarily need another player who wants more touches. He needs players who make the space around him more dangerous. That's why Klay and Kuminga answer 2 completely different questions. Kuminga can create an advantage. Klay can make the advantage Luka already creates much harder to defend. And if the Lakers are choosing based specifically on what makes Luka's offense work in the playoffs, that distinction matters. And if you like NBA stories that go beyond the headlines and actually break down why these moves could change a team, subscribe to NBA Echoes. Because the Klay conversation isn't really about whether he can recreate his Warriors career. It's about whether one elite remaining skill can solve the biggest structural problem on Luka's new team. And that's where this gets even more interesting. Look at what Los Angeles has done. They found the rim protector, they kept Reaves, they added defensive wings, they added shooting. They established a clear hierarchy. Luka is the engine, Kessler is the roll man, Reaves is the secondary creator. The role players fill the gaps. On paper, it's a much cleaner roster, but the Western Conference doesn't care how clean the roster looks on paper. Oklahoma City won't, San Antonio won't, Minnesota won't. When the playoffs arrive, those teams are going to do the same thing. They're going to test Luka. They're going to force someone else to beat them. They're going to ask, who are you willing to leave open? And that's where the Lakers' entire offseason could come down to one answer. If the defense can leave a shooter, Luka's life gets harder. If the defense can't leave anybody, Luka becomes almost impossible to contain. That's the entire argument for Klay. This is why I don't think the Lakers should be asking whether Klay Thompson is still an all-star. He's not. They shouldn't be asking whether he's still a great defender. He's not. They shouldn't be asking whether he's going to become the 2000. I wouldn't trade major long-term assets for Klay Thompson just because the name sounds good. I wouldn't pretend that one veteran shooter fixes every Lakers problem. And I definitely wouldn't bring him in expecting the old Klay. But if Dallas is willing to move him for a reasonable package, if Los Angeles can make the salary work, if the Lakers don't have to sacrifice another major piece of their future, and if Klay accepts a reduced role, then this becomes one of the most logical short-term upgrades available to them. Because the Lakers don't need another superstar. They don't even necessarily need another player who wants the ball. They need someone who makes the defense hesitate. And that is still something Klay Thompson can potentially provide. The Lakers have spent this offseason building Luka Dončic's team. They paid for the center. They paid to keep Reaves. They added defenders. They added shooting. They reshaped the roster around one superstar. But championship basketball isn't decided by what looks good in August. It's decided by what survives in May. And in May, every elite defense is going to try the same thing. Put two bodies on Luka, shrink the floor, force somebody else to win. If Los Angeles has a shooter standing in the corner that nobody can afford to leave, that strategy becomes much harder. If they don't, then the Lakers could have built a much better roster without actually solving the problem that matters most. And that's why Klay Thompson is such an interesting possibility. Not because of the 4 championships, not because he's from Los Angeles, not because of what he used to be, because of what he can still do. Shoot. And when the player creating the shots is Luka Dončić, that one skill can become much more valuable than the box score suggests. So now I want to hear from you. If the Lakers could get Klay without sacrificing another major piece of their future, would you make the trade? Or is this just nostalgia disguised as roster construction? Let me know in the comments. Because if the Lakers really are building Luka's championship team, this problem may be the one that decides whether they actually finish it.